India now are staring at a deficit of 356. Now, that is a massive, massive task indeed. They may have gotten off to a good start in the second innings, but there is still a huge mountain to climb for Rohit Sharma. 356, a deficit, can really make it daunting. But is it impossible? Many people practically will say, yes, it is impossible to erase that deficit and go on to win from that. But don't worry, it can happen because if you look at the past in Test cricket, there have been instances where the deficit has been huge, yet a team has gone on to win the Test match. Now, I'll point out 5 instances here where a team has stared at a huge deficit and managed to win the Test match. The most memorable instance that you can think of in the last 30 to 40 years was 1992 Colombo. Sri Lanka versus Australia. Australia were playing in Sri Lanka after a gap of 9 years. Then what happened in that? Australia got bundled out for 256. Sri Lanka responded with 547 with 3 centuries. But Australia gritted their way and made 471. 181 runs to win. Sri Lanka suffered an epic collapse and lost by 16 runs. Sri Lanka then had to wait for a very long time to ensure they got their first win over Australia. So that is why a 291 run deficit is truly been the upper threshold. 356, yes, agreed, 65 runs more, but with 2 days left, anything can happen. If for India, when you have to look at the Indian context, 2001 Eden Gardens, Kolkata, India versus Australia. Australia batted first 445, India were bundled out for 171. They had a deficit of 274 runs. But then we all know what happened. Folklore, magic, revival, revolution, everything happened. VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid's 376 run stand ensured India won the Test match by a commanding margin of 171 runs. That is when cricket changed. Australia and most nations from that point on rarely enforce the follow on. Australia versus England. Now, this is a very interesting match from what happened in 1894. In Australia had made 586. England were bundled out for 325. So, a deficit of 261 was there. But then Australia had an epic collapse. And then they lost by 10 runs. They had to chase 176. They lost by 10 runs in that sense. So England won by 10 runs and Australia could not believe what had happened. 586. England responded in kind with 437 in the second innings after being all out for 325. Leeds, 1981 Leeds, Botham's Ashes. Australia were in the ascendancy after taking a 227 run lead. But Botham, with the tail, managed to get them to a total which India will all be looking at, 356. Then what happened? Australia lost their way and lost by 18 runs, which is why when you look at it, England have really stepped up and ensured that Australia would be hurt not once but twice, nearly 87 years later. Australia versus Pakistan, Sydney 2010. 206 run was the deficit thanks to Kamran Akmal's dropped catches and Michael Hussey, Peter Siddle all putting on a partnership towards the tail ensured Australia managed to defend 175. 36 runs Pakistan lost by Nathan Horitz taking a 5-wicket haul along with Mitchell Johnson, Doug Bollinger chipping in with the wickets. But India will take special inspiration from the fact that whenever they have been bowled out for 100, 3 times they have held out for draws versus New Zealand. 1965 Mumbai at the Brabant Stadium, they somehow managed to hold out for a draw at Mumbai. In 1969 Hyderabad, rain had played a major role after India were bundled out for 89, and that is why they drew it. 1999 Mohali, Dion Nash had taken 6 wickets, but then Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar all stepped up in the second innings. Dravid, I remember, scored 144 and the match was drawn. The pitch, whatever moisture was there on day one had eased off. It became an absolute belter of a deck. So that is why when you look at it, Conditions in Bangalore are kind of similar. Yes, it is established that no nation has ever won after having a huge deficit of 300. But records are meant to be broken. Can India achieve the unthinkable in Bengaluru? 2 days left. Let's see how that pans out. Thank you so much, folks, for joining us for this video. So, subscribe to Sports Today for all the latest news and analysis.